In 1974, Nestlé suppressed an internal report linking their infant formula marketing to infant deaths across 3 continents. And at the height of the crisis, researchers estimated 1 million babies were dying annually in the affected markets, yet not a single executive was ever named in a courtroom. They knew, and they buried it. So why has no one ever told you who signed off on that decision? Nestlé, the name is practically synonymous with comfort. Kit Kat, Nescafé, Milo, the company that feeds billions. For most of the 20th century, they positioned themselves as a global nutrition company, a company that cared about children. They ran campaigns in hospitals, they partnered with pediatricians, they put women in white coats and sent them into maternity wards across the developing world. That was the image: trusted, maternal, scientific. The reality behind it, documented, internal, suppressed, was something else entirely. In the early 1970s, Nestlé had already cornered infant formula markets across Africa, Asia, and Latin America. The business model was elegant and brutal. Send sales representatives dressed in nurse uniforms, they called them milk nurses, into hospitals in Nigeria, Pakistan, Colombia. Give new mothers free formula samples, long enough for breast milk to stop producing. Once it stopped, there was no going back. Formula required clean water to mix. In regions where clean water was scarce, mothers mixed it with contaminated supplies. In regions of extreme poverty, mothers diluted the formula to stretch it further. Half-strength formula fed twice a week is not nutrition. It is starvation on a delay. By 1973, internal Nestlé communications had already flagged the pattern. Infant mortality rates in areas where formula had displaced breastfeeding were climbing. The company had the data. A 1974 report commissioned by a British charity documented it plainly. Nestlé's marketing practices were directly contributing to infant deaths across multiple countries. Nestlé's response was not a recall. It was not a policy review. They sued. The charity was War on Want. Their 1974 report was titled The Baby Killer. When a Swiss advocacy group translated it and retitled it, Nestlé Kills Babies, Nestlé filed a defamation lawsuit in a Bern courtroom. They won technically. The judge ruled the title was too inflammatory. But then the judge said something Nestlé never wanted on the official record. He stated their marketing practices were, in his exact words, immoral and unethical. A sitting judge handed them a moral indictment inside a legal victory, and Nestlé immediately spun the outcome as complete exoneration. The press cycle moved on. The dying didn't stop. A coordinated consumer boycott launched in the United States in 1977. Major health institutions called for international regulation. Nestlé kept expanding into new markets. Revenue kept climbing. The architects of the strategy never once appeared before a government panel. But that's not even the part they really didn't want out. The scale is not a rounding error. By the late 1970s, researchers estimating the full mortality burden weren't using projections. They were working from field data, from pediatric studies, from mortality records in the exact markets where Nestlé's market share had grown fastest. The number, 1 million infants per year, came from the same health infrastructure Nestlé had been partnering with to sell formula in hospitals. In 1981, the World Health Organization passed the International Code of Marketing of Breast Milk Substitutes, a binding global standard to end predatory formula promotion. 118 countries voted in favor, 1 country voted against. The United States. Nestlé's lobbying presence in Washington was not subtle. The Reagan administration, 12 months into office, sided with the industry position. One dissenting vote from the world's largest economy was enough to fracture any hope of binding global enforcement. Here is where the 1974 report comes back. The same data Nestlé had buried internally, the same correlation between aggressive marketing and infant mortality that their own researchers had flagged, was now sitting in meeting rooms while American trade negotiators argued it was inconclusive. Nestlé's internal documents and the international public record described the same crisis. Only one version reached a press release. Formula sales in developing markets had grown 300% between 1970 and 1980. The executives responsible for that growth retired with full compensation. This is the architecture that makes corporate harm legally survivable. Nestlé's legal strategy never denied the deaths. It denied causation. Causation is nearly impossible to establish in court when the decision chain runs through 17 subsidiaries, 3 continents, and a distribution network operating through technically independent contractors. The milk nurses weren't Nestlé employees on paper. The hospitals weren't Nestlé property. The formula wasn't illegal. Every link was deniable by design. By 1984, under sustained pressure, Nestlé signed an agreement promising to comply with the WHO marketing code. The boycott was suspended. Within 4 years, independent health monitors documented Nestlé violating that same code in multiple markets. The boycott resumed in 1988. No executive was named. No fine was issued. The company posted record earnings the following fiscal year. The boycott is still technically active today, 47 years in. Nestlé is now the largest food and beverage company on Earth, 188 countries, over $90 billion in annual revenue. The international code they signed in 1984 carries no binding enforcement mechanism. Compliance remains voluntary. Violations are documented annually by independent monitors and largely ignored. So here is the question no one in that boardroom ever had to answer out loud. If you had the data and you had the distribution network and you could see exactly what was happening in those markets, what precisely did you believe you were selling?